so thank you all. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for having the opportunity to do this remotely. I'm in Berlin at the moment. This is where the company resides. My name is Lieke Ypma. I'm born Dutch. And I just recently founded a company in mobility design, human-centric design for mobility. I'm a designer and an engineer. I'm a practitioner and a lecturer. I think by Catherine's talk, that is a paradox in itself. And I'd like to give you a little view inside my business with a focus on the methodologies that we use that could be of interest for you guys. So we are a boutique user experience consultancy. We work currently for free-floating cargo bike sharing, Avocago. We work for remote controlled ride-hailing Vi, and we work for a luxury brand, Porsche. We'd like to design mobility that is inclusive for all users. And we also have experience in the team with public transport authorities, with real estate developers, and with communities. And yes, I also agree to Tina's talk from yesterday. We do need showers to get bicycle mobility to work out. So you can better place who I am and what I do. I brought to you a figure that I came across in the MOOC on Coursera from University of Amsterdam's cycling professor Marco de Brommelstoet. And it's a figure that shows how change comes about. So on the top, you have the social technical landscape, and then on the bottom, you have the niche innovations, and somewhere in the middle is defined the opportunity window that has as one marker the user preferences. And this is where I work at. What are the user preferences and how can we best design for them? So I work with companies that have a niche innovation and they'd like to bring that to the market as best as possible. And then we do that. The talk today will be about how people outlive technology and why I believe that. As I said, I work in user-centered design for mobility, and I'd like to start with you with some mythbusters about what user-centered design is and what it's not. I brought some details about the approach and how I think it's a spirit of work, the gap that can then appear between details in the approach, actually between what we see in the field and our solutions. And for that, I use a method called job to be done to close that gap, and some details on that. And I have a case study on curbside management. So that's quite a lot. Let's get going. The mythbusters. What is user-centered design and what it's not? So people go like, oh, let's, make it easy to use. That's probably what you do in your daily work. Well, then I tell them, well, a pizza is easy to use. A deep frozen pizza, you just take it out of the plastic and throw it in the oven. But is it desirable? A drive-in is easy to use, but is it desirable? So it's as much, user-centered design is as much about making mobility solutions that are desirable for all as it is about reducing friction. Oh, so people think you are fixing problems, right? Let's fix a problem. Let's find a problem. Let's fix a problem. Well, if the problems were out there just to solve, that would be super easy, but usually they are not. So it's about, it's definitely about finding a problem, but it's also about getting the user as an inspiration. So I would say these people don't have a problem, but they have a lot of fun, and they have a lot of fun writing this line. And it's that quality that we are looking for. It's that character in the solutions that we are looking for. Also, let's ask users what they like and don't like. Yes, I do speak to users very often, but it's not about asking their likes and dislikes. Because as Henry Ford already said it, when we would have asked the users what they like, they would have said, well, I need a faster horse and not a car. And we also know this image is actually unknown, but it's an image used very often in practice. When we ask a user, the things they say and they do and they feel and they think are 4 different things. Yes, I would ask a user in my screening, oh, is sustainability an important topic for you? And they would say, yes, it's super important. And, I take the train and blah, blah, blah. And, then you see their mobility options, and actually they take the car to work every day. Yeah, because, they don't want to take the detour, they want to combine jobs. And so they say things, but they do different things. And this is for us to uncover and to find, the nuggets that we act upon. So it's about making things desirable for all. It's about catering to people's needs rather than fixing their problems. And it's about carefully observing people. As I said, I think it's a spirit. It's something that helps in, well, for certain, as I said, I'm a practitioner. So for certain in businesses, it's a spirit that helps bring teams together. And how we do that? Well, we work along this approach that starts with observing. Why is this lady carrying a ladder? Oh, there's a ladder again. So is the first lady also wanting to, pack her luggage? Or, does she want to bring attention to this obstacle in the street? So we observe and we talk to the people to find out why, and we try to find patterns. I was at this this train station, and the briefing was, oh yeah, the users, one of the user groups is tourists. Let's do something for user groups. You guys, can you go there as a team and observe what the people need what we can do for the tourists? Well, came out that we have 4 groups of tourists in this particular small station. So there is a group that's interested in culture, there's a group that's interested in nature, and there's a group that's more interested in sports. So 3 totally different groups with totally different needs. And for that, you need to carefully observe. And then you need to synthesize. We do that by asking why. Why do you carry the ladder? The theory goes that if you ask why 5 times, you come at the base needs, Maslow pyramid. But somewhere between the first why and the 5th why, we come at the point where we start recognizing patterns and we start recognizing motivations. And then we try to validate the findings. So these are very, very qualitative. But now that we have so much numbers, we really try to put the numbers to support that assumption. And here we looked at a sharing service, a bike sharing service, and their data. So where do the rides start? Where do the users stop? Where do the users end their bikes? Can we find the destinations, and can we find why they did this? And this is, obviously a complex data analytics problem where we really need to get into the minds of the people and really try to find groups of destinations with the help of destination services such as Google, and combining it with their own private data. Yeah, so then we know a whole lot about the user, and we can build a product. Well, it's not so easy, because obviously we need to prioritize what we're doing, because we can't build that left side all floating in air cargo bike if the right side is our reality. So this is an example of the free floating cargo bike surface that we work with. It's the 3-wheel cargo bike that is easy for starters to get on. And we had a long list of user needs. And one of them was that the 3-wheel cargo bike, if you are a good bicyclist, it can tip over. And this is a quality that we started with in this case, because we wanted to prevent people from tipping over, right? And the way we went about it is with the Kano model, where you look at what qualities are expected as a basic, what qualitatives can really, bring enlightenment and joy, and what qualities are actually a deal breaker. If that happens, if the bike tips over, that would be a reason for a person never to hire this bike again. So you need to prioritize what is desirable, what is feasible, and what is viable. And then we test. And in the test, we observe again, obviously. Okay, if you're feeling brave, you can do without the validation. You go with your first sort of aha moment, and you right away build it. That's a good example from Ken Kosienda. It's neatly told in the book Creative Selection, where at Apple they were building Safari, and their main metrics to test the development of the product was to pick the page loading time and test it against, back then, the main competitor in the market, which was Internet Explorer. And again, this comes back to, it's almost like they could see in the future us sitting in the pub with our smartphones and going like, wait, I'll show you, and showing it to our friends and not wanting to wait for the page to load, combined with the vision that the internet would become richer in itself. So, they built a browser that helps the user to find information quickly, so you can carry on with what you were doing, which is in this case, in the pub, the conversation. So if we test, what are the metrics that we test against? And does it have a link to the human behavior? So as I said, sometimes people who are very brave, they don't validate, they just build right away. And people who are very, very, very brave, they take the launch as the test. So Dance is a subscription bike from Berlin, but already across Europe, they're offering their e-bike for subscription, and they launched with an IoT lock. And then recently they took the lock out because it was unreliable and it was not a desirable interaction. You're on this super chic, nicely painted bike where all your friends go like, ooh, what do you have there? You arrive first because it's actually very fast. You're not sweaty, so you're all in control. And then you get off the bike and you need to pull out your phone that's somewhere in a pocket to lock the bike. And that's something that, the phone doesn't have a natural space there. So it was both an unreliable solution and it was an undesirable interaction, which is why they just took it out. And I think that is also by itself very brave, because they are essentially de-scoping this product. But normal people, they, validate a little bit before they get going, and then they test and launch. And then usually companies start to communicate. And in this case, the cargo bike sharing again, the question is also, do we communicate now, as you can see on the left, to young adults who care a lot about the environment, or do we communicate to parents who have this use case of riding the kids? So all the way, starting with the researcher and the people who have daily contacts, such as customer service, through the engineers and the designers, all the way through the social media specialist who is putting together this Instagram campaign. They all need to have a feeling of what it is that the user does. So you get it, observe the users, find patterns, validate those patterns, try to put some kind of numbers behind it, build it, test it, and launch it. And then you start doing it and you find out, there's some gaps. People don't understand my findings, or, we did act upon our findings, but somehow it doesn't really work out. And I'd like to highlight some of the gaps that I see happening in the field. So you observe and then you build, without finding the patterns and without validating. So this is a supermarket, Aldi, I'm sure you know. So they observed more bikes coming to shop, to run their errands at Aldi. So they decided to build bike racks directly. And then they found out that all bikes bigger than single bikes park somewhere else. And why? Because they take a big shopping amount, say for 1 week, and they want to put it directly from the trolley into the bike, because the bike is not lockable, right? So cargo bikes, the carts that pull behind the bikes, they park somewhere else. So it's almost like a half a solution. But it's a good, don't get me wrong. It's excellent, of course, that the supermarket is building bike racks, but until they really solve this problem, almost building the drive-in of supermarkets, the job is not solved for this individual. Other people get stuck in building and building it better and building it even better, still being on the drawing board and not launching and not learning. And it can be very successful, right? Because this Volkswagen W bus is almost bigger than the house. And if you build and build and build, this is what you can end up with. A product that has so many features, that is so good, that you have other solutions coming around the corner from unexpected areas, such as this, right? It does, it feels like freedom. You can take a whole lot of stuff, you can go places, it looks like fun to ride. So it has the same promise as the Volkswagen bus, but definitely spec-wise, it's inferior to the Volkswagen bus. And that's why it's called asymmetric competition, because it's asymmetric to what's happening. We've seen that we've seen that in the mobile phone industry, when Nokia definitely had the better phones in terms of reception, in terms of power in terms of, keys and everything. And then the iPhone came around that, couldn't do multitasking, and, it was inferior. The antenna performance was less. The battery would die after one day. But, it's something that fits better to the behavior of the people. So definitely the cargo bike startup got that right with their quote here, space like a car, and targeting car drivers here. So sometimes we go directly from observing to validation to building. The Berlin Metro wanted to do something for female travelers, and they did a survey. And they found out females want the trains to be reliable and on time. And they found out they want to feel safe at night. And they said, well, everyone wants to have, reliable service. So let's focus for the females, especially on making stations safe at night. But they forgot to ask why. Why is reliability so important, and actually more important for females? And it was in the numbers, but they failed to see it. It's because more females do care work. They combine unpaid care work with paid work, and thus they have pressure to arrive in time twice a day. So in the morning to arrive in time at work, and in the evening to arrive in time at, daycare or daily care, or, go to the doctor's to the doctor's appointment with an aunt or so. So, they jumped over that why question. Okay, and sometimes the building is just based on numbers. So you see those lines in the street, you see them everywhere. Actually, we've become very good in measuring cars, in measuring car streams, but we don't know how many people are in that car. We don't know anything about how many bikes or how many pedestrians are crossing the street. So if we know car streams, it's easy to optimize the city for more car throughput. And that's what engineers in cities have been done over the past decades, optimize car throughput, and not looking at solutions that are desirable for all. So don't take it too literal what you observe and go directly into building. Don't build and build and build, because you may build something that is too big for the need of the customer. Don't jump the synthesis question asking why, and don't base your work on numbers only. So I'd like to dive with you into that synthesis job, because that's where a lot of the magic happens. And we use a theory for that. It's called job to be done. It was first coined by Professor Christensen from the Harvard University. And since then taken by Ulrich and the strategy consultancy and others that work with it a lot. You can find very good content on that job to be done theory. But let me explain you in a very high level way a little bit about it. So it looks at what progress the user is looking for. Or in different terms, because progress sounds a bit like, making things better, faster, and we won't get to sustainable solutions if we only look at better and faster. So I'd like to think of it also as how to thrive. What does the user need to thrive? It's Catherine Roholt who coined that, with her theory of users need to thrive. So it's a science of humans, right? Not machines. So let's look at this human. So this is a German message in a research I received from a guy who was just, summing up his day, picking up his shirts by e-bike, riding the ICE train, holding a meeting, returning on the train, then biking, picking up errands, picking up the kids. So what are his jobs to be done? What does he need in every single step of this day? So yes, he does have a functional job, help me to travel from A to B. In the old days, we would take a steam train, and now, 10 years ago, we would probably take an airplane. And, nowadays we either, do the meeting remote or take the IC train, the high-speed train. So the solution changes, but the need stays the same. So it can also be, the whole social job to be done, help me to arrive well prepared at that meeting. Some people print out their stuff and read it on the train. Other people have phone calls on the car. And actually, if calling your secretary on your way to work is how you prepare for your work, this is a need that we should look at when building public transport, because that means that we have a whole group that has a habit, a pattern, making phone calls in the car that they need to stop doing currently if they go on public transport, because the perception is just so bad. I don't know how it is in France, but so in general in Germany, reception on the train is very bad. So again, the job arriving well prepared after your journey is something that we can look at in the different modalities of travel. And so this guy goes up and picks up his parents. So help me to be a good parent. In the old days, this would be, putting your kid in a Volvo with side impact protection and everything. But did you know that kids see less if they are in a car compared to when they are on a bike? So, with a sustainable mindset, people would rather, like to have the kids on a bike and chat with them while they ride to work or to home. Some of the jobs to be done that were not in this guy's little diary of his day, but something that is really, often seen in mobility is, of course, I want to be seen. Again, something that has changed over the years. Going from the horse and carriage to the cabriolet, and over to having a chic e-bike and showing that you are on the forefront. And being at the forefront, that was basically why Porsche was built in the 50s, showing that, hey, we survived the war and let's build a Porsche. But maybe then, in 2010 or so, this was about riding a kick scooter. Nowadays it's maybe around, staying at home and ordering your food and being first in that manner. So that's why I say people outlive technology, because human motivation stays while technology evolves. So it makes sense to look at what the user does, because it gives you longer living solutions, let's say more sustainable solutions, happy users. It also helps to align people in the workspace. The discussion is not anymore about, I think this or I think that. It's really together. You go like, what would the user think of that? And what do our users say of that? And how do you think they would react? And it also makes people very motivated in the workplace, because they're driven by making solutions that are good and inclusive for all. So this is the moment also to then imagine possible futures. And as an, in fact, interdisciplinary area of work, I brought this case of the curbside management. It's something I did with one of the universities here in Berlin, with a group of design students, and trickling them a little bit into, working with engineering students. Curbside management, little introduction to curbside management, and then the possible futures that arise from there. So curbside management, on the curb, there's a lot of things happening, right? People run errands with small bikes, with big bikes. They have fun. They play on the curbside. They receive packages, or there is bigger logistics happening. They pick a bus. They go for a stroll. Let alone the waste management, the water management. So there's a lot of things happening at the curbside. It's a building structure in the city, but this is what it looks like. The curbside is used for parking cars. Now, Rachel Natkani, she's a researcher from Boston, and she worked at the DIFU, the German Institute for Urbanistics, and she coined the term access zone. And this is an image from Amsterdam. It's a sort of non-structured structure, and it explains, what she thinks it is. It's the access zone. It's where people go to their destinations and away from their destinations, because a lot of people in modern mobility, they don't go from A to B, but they go from A to B to C. They pick up a parcel, they continue to their work, then they go for lunch, and always they combine their destinations and their goals. So, and with that, they take access and they go away. So it's a cross. It's a movement, a cross-axial movement. So what we look at building structures as well as digital layers here, because on all these use cases, on almost all these use cases, we have some kind of data, right? And the project question then in this little project I did with the students is, imagine we could use those digital layers to distribute the space socially and environmentally fair. What would that look like? And as I said, the access zone is a cross-axial movement. So we need to rethink how we get the data, because usually we get the data like this. There's a line and there's things crossing the line. And often it's only cars, but sometimes also pedestrians. This is actually a snapshot of a project called We Count from Belgium, where it's a DIY set to count traffic in your street. This is actually around the corner from where I live, where we try to count the traffic on the route to school to secure better safety and fun on the streets for kids. And although this is sort of state-of-the-art DIY counting traffic material, it only measures the streams of traffic and not that cross-axis movement. But we can imagine, right? We can imagine, what would it be to enter the bus anywhere? Would the bus then become sort of like the taxi with the same kind of freedom? Would it be more desirable because it has more personal flexibility? And what would the street look like? So one student came up, Paul Herman came up with the street. So the bottom is the street as it looks right now, and the top is what he was envisioning, sort of the flexible zone, having living space, flexible living space, market days, play zones, restaurants, and the mobility zone being also flexible in itself, where, mass and bus stops would just, dynamically happen. So it would also mean maybe we could receive our stuff with a little bit less of a bad conscience. So this bike, it's an electrical logistics bike delivering packages at homes. It's a nice idea, it can ride on the pavement, but obviously it cannot do its work as it could do if there was more access. It would also mean we could think of the water management in a different way. Because we could plant, put trees where we have the space and where they are needed most. So on the left side, you see a project from Leeuwarden in Holland. And it has boxes with trees, 1,000 boxes with trees in a small city. And all through summer, they were moved to different spaces. It was an art project and there were no data behind it. But imagine you would put the right side project with it. It's a digitization of the green stock in Berlin that actually depicts how much water it got over the last 30 days. You've seen we've had a lot of rain over the last 30 days. So imagine you would combine those and put those trees instead of parked cars at the curb. That is working with the digital layers, and that is imagining how we have a better future for everyone. So imagine pedestrian first crossing. And this is, as I said, at the moment, not possible, but probably you can help us make it happen, because we don't have that cross-actual movement. It's hard to count it. But this is a drawing you're looking at from a section we looked at with the students, where this lady, Moa Haldin, was envisioning that as soon as a user hits the road would light up and create a green path. So in the night, that would look like this, with lights engraved in the concrete. Well, obviously you can think of what that would mean in terms of environmental impact. But thinking of pedestrian first interactions on the road and not having a traffic light where the pedestrian needs to push a button, where the cars automatically have the right of way, I think is something that we need to put images in the brains of people, and then, call out to people deciding and people, making it happen, like you guys. What is it that we need to get there? So I'm coming to the takeaways. Again, start with observation. You can start today. It won't go away anymore. Observations and asking why. So whenever I see a person that shapes mobility and I have some time on my hands, I start talking to this person. And so in this way, I found the first Uber driver from Berlin, but I also talked to the people swapping bikes and what their issues are and how their working conditions are. I talked to the gorilla drivers, the fast commerce people, what they think of it. So it won't go away. Once you observe humans, you start seeing things. And you start creating assumptions. And then you want to validate it with the right data. And you need to build the systems to get those right data. And you are the guys who build it. And you're the guys who are trained to build it. So I'm looking to you for your help there. Then decide with spirit. And that's really, get out of the office and decide really with your heart what's good. What is it that you want to manifest in the future? And dare to dream, because you have the means to make it possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieke.
Are there any questions?
Yes.
Thanks a lot for your talk.
Hello. Thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting because it was really marketing and user experience oriented. And I think as academic people, we are not really used to think in this way. And we have other question, and this is this is a question I have. What is the role played by more literal aspects of sustainability, like the resource consumption for the conception of the objects, the environmental impacts, the reusability, the repairability of the objects you propose in the market, and yes, this type of things.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, you know, the aspects of sustainability play a role in what we do, but our observation is people act sustainable if they are nudged into it. And we help with this nudging. So of course, you know, going back to that picture that I showed all the way in the beginning, that window of opportunity, the user perspective is only one bit of it. You know, they're technical, they're political, there's you know, business factors that take a role as well. And what we try to do is find out where we can nudge them, how we can nudge them, and help them nudge, right? So if we're building free-floating cargo bikes, you know, we came up with the idea of let's partner with the places where people need a cargo bike. So for instance, at the plant market, yeah, they buy a lot of plant and dirt and they want to take it home, so they need a cargo bike. And this is how we put design and environmentability together. And same counts for you know, things like repairability. You know, that's good practice, but still, you know, you need to create awareness for it, and you need to grab the people when they are aware. So you might have heard of this. There was a huge festival in Berlin that was meant to be the most circular festival in Europe at the moment, last weekend. And very famous German bands played. And there was recycling of the toilets, and you know, people were nudged into coming with the train, and so these were parts of the initiatives around the music festival. But a lot of the fans came and they didn't know about this. So there's a huge work to do in making people aware of it and then nudging them into it. And of course, if the lines before the toilet are very long, people start using the environmental better toilet because they have a need. So it's sometimes that basic.
Thanks a lot, Lieke, for the presentation. I have two questions. One is probably easy, the other one is difficult. The easy one first. Like these Berlin bikes with the IoT electronic lock, what replace the electronic lock with? And was it still an ICT solution, or was it something very mundane, mechanic, maybe more long-lived than any IoT thing could be? And the second one is, like, you propose the idea of using the data layer or ICT to make a curbside fairer. I like that a lot, but my question is, how do you design a requirement process that defines fairness, and how do you encode that notion of fairness afterwards into whatever systems you design? So what is fairness, and how do we get it into the electronic stuff that we build?
So on the bike startup, the IoT lock, they actually have a number lock now. So that's why I said they de-scope the product, and they're probably working on a new IoT solution, because otherwise they lose all the data of their people with their subscription, and they do have an IoT solution in there, so they can track the bike properly. So they, you know, in case of the bike being stolen, they can still find it, but not a user-facing solution. So there's just a number bike. That's why I think it's a brave decision to just de-scope the bike just to get a better experience. The second question, the data layer on making the curbside fairer and the requirement process around it. This actually is still an outstanding project, because I would love, so we designed a lot of, or we came up with a lot of assumptions, but I did this project with design students, and obviously they are less trained to think of the technical possibilities. So one of the assumption would be, if we were to measure the pedestrian movement more accurately, we could combine them with the destinations. So like how many schools, how many shopping malls, how many post offices or places where you can drop packages, and how many elderly, how many people without a driver's license, how many people with a driver's license. So these were the assumptions. If we would have to analyze those data, we would find groups of users and divide the space on the street. Let's say if we have 100 meters of parking spots, and we have 30% of the people, or maybe 50% of the people not having a driver's license, we should have at least 50% of those 100 meters not for parking spots. So assumptions on assumptions. Does that answer a little bit your question?
Yeah, getting that.
Do you have another question? If not, I can ask one. Okay. I had maybe one. I don't know if you had one. Okay. Thanks for your talk. That was indeed very interesting to have another perspective than the ones we are used to have. I had a question because I feel like you seem looking at the users to kind of fulfill what they would need. Like, okay, that could be great to do this because they might need this and blah, blah, and then design depending on that. But my question would be, if habits and behaviors of people are to change, because it is not just about the products and service, like if habits have profoundly to change for like decreasing our environmental impacts or whatever, how do you design things such that you have incentive? That I guess like the first one currently is economic, like financial incentive, but what kind of other levers do you have such that we can embed directly in design, like with design team, and effectively deliver something that will nudge people or drive people to do differently? I don't know if the question is clear, but
Yeah, definitely. There is a theory under the jobs we done theory that defines the forces that apply on the user. So we have forces that pull people into a new solution because it looks good. It looks like they would be a better version of themselves, right? So you might know that Tesla started with a roadster, not with a practical, small, sweet city car. In fact, there were a lot of those cars around for people that are less abled, for cities that are very crowded, such as in Japan, and they didn't fly. But Tesla decided, oh, let's make a, back then a sexy young man's car, so it pulls people into our future. So very smart. That's one of the forces that apply. Of course, you can also push people into there, which means you give them incentives, which is what is discussed back and forth. How much incentive should we give people for driving an electric car? Maybe not that much that we're giving them today, because we should rather incentivize them to ride the bus and the bike. Then there are forces that hold them back. As you say, it's patterns. It's inertia. It's like a slow ship on the ocean. It's people have been doing things the way they are doing things. And we need to very closely understand that. And for that, I'd like to give you an example from a slightly different area. So when Google Sheets built a sheet solution, in the beginning, you couldn't open Excel files in there until they realized that, because they, took a competitor stand and then they said, that's a different sort of, we won't enable people to jump back and forth, until they understood that people have all their data in Excel. And if we want them to use Google Sheet, we just make it easier to jump. So now it's open to jump. So people have been doing Excel, so they will do Excel in the future. And now, pull them into Google Sheets and make it possible to open the files. And then keep them in Google Sheet because it's the better solution. And that becomes then that's the challenge of today's time, is really to build experiences that are better, because switching between services and solutions is so easy that you can only win by keeping up your development, also in sustainability. Back when I was a small kid, the cookies in the bio supermarket didn't taste that well. Now they taste superb. So build nice cookies.
Hi, Lieke. Thanks for the presentation. I'm going to play a little bit the advocate of the devil, because I'm curious. Like, your comment about Tesla made me think about how it might, like, driving an electric car might seem environmental friendly to the user, but I just pulled up an article in which Tesla actually made huge profits out of selling the carbon credits they get from sort of producing electric vehicles. So in the end, you can wonder to what extent can the user actually impact sort of the sustainability around these type of issues. So it's like, to what extent do you actually feel that nudging the user to do something will solve some of these more structural problems that are actually economic, political in nature?
I'd like to think of, the political, the deciders as people as well, political deciders, business deciders, which is why I love initiatives like all the deciders in Hanover had to go by bike for 2 weeks. And, it's really, bringing them to talking to them as they need to use it as well. You might know that the Dutch Queen is taking the bike publicly to go to an arts exhibition, and, Holland is a bicycle country, but it's also through the combination of this, famous people riding the bike. So deciders are users as well.
Okay. Hi, Lieke, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the talk. You mentioned the jobs to be done methodology or like approach, and also focusing on what people need to build products around those needs, right? And my question is that what if those people's needs actually collide with like needs of actors that you have not covered in this initial landscaping of the needs landscape, right? Let's say there's like planetary boundaries and constraints on what is available and maybe also sustainable to be used. How do you factor in those needs of entities and maybe also future needs of the people that they haven't expressed but are very, very relevant for the product landscape and then the world that we live in?
Yeah. Good question. Going back to the very first image, the window of opportunity, the user needs only define one little factor in there. And, at the end of the presentation, dreaming the possible futures, that is as if we as engineers and designers don't come up with an undesirable future, it won't be built, because deciders and political people, they can't create. So it's our responsibility to take that into account and to just not come up with bad solutions. But what I'm saying here, looking at that little factor of the human in there, we have to build something that is desirable for the people in a close future, because if we build something that is desirable for the user in a far future, he won't understand. So that's where, you can't pull them into the new solution because it's too early. So step by step.
Is there any more question? So, as Thibaut, you ask, you meet my question, so I won't ask. I think it's okay. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you,
the
Lieke.
speaker again.
Thank you.